Do you sometimes find yourself compulsively eating, drinking, smoking, or otherwise numbing and distracting yourself from the hardships of life? It's an understandable response when we're overwhelmed or when we don't know how to move forward in our lives. Imagine if you were no longer slave to your compulsions and addictions, how much better your life would be. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to do exactly that, how to overcome urges and compulsions as well as addictions so that you can take the driver's seat of your life and live powerfully. Hi, my name is Richard Haight. I'm a master of martial arts as well as meditation. I spent 15 years in Japan studying the ancient arts. I'd like to share some of that wisdom with you. While you're here, I'm offering a free 7-day trial of the Warrior's Meditation. This is a type of awareness training that I learned while studying in Japan. It utterly transformed my life. I'm sure it will do the same for you. Click the link below to get your free 7-day trial. And now on to the topic of this video. Before we can go too far into the topic of this video, we need to understand what it is we're really discussing here. Essentially, if we look at habits and we look at addictions as well as compulsions, there's a common denominator amongst them, is that these are essentially distracting or numbing agents. And they come from suffering. They're born of suffering. Born of overwhelm or an inability to navigate, the feeling that we are unable to navigate our way through whatever it is we're experiencing in life right now. Now, some of these things can be due to overwhelm that we're experiencing in this moment, but some of them can also be from moments in our lives when we were children or younger, maybe when we were heavily abused or traumatized, that are reoccurring, and the effect of the suffering, sometimes subconscious suffering, is an urge or a compulsion to maybe eat a lot or eat sweets, to smoke marijuana, to drink alcohol, to talk a lot, to turn on the radio constantly, to constantly have to fill or distract yourself or numb yourself from present reality. If we look at these at the habits and addictions and compulsions and urges as a symptom, we start to get a greater clarity. In fact, there were some experiments done with rodents, and what the experiments were as with heroin. So the original experiments were done back in like the 1960s and 50s, where mice were given heroin. There's a mouse in a cage, and they were given heroin water or regular water, the choice. And what happened is that the mouse inevitably became addicted to the heroin, and that's all the heroin water, and that's all they drank. But more recently, and I don't have a clear recollection of the story of the study right now, pardon me, but someone had found the previous study to be somehow seem a little bit unnatural, and they wanted to redo the study with mice that were living a healthy lifestyle. And so what they did is they had a central play area, and the mice had the ability to get together and socialize and play and do all the things. So they basically had a normal mouse life. And then the mice, when they would go into the cage, they would have the option of regular water and heroin water. And although they would on occasion drink the heroin water, they never became addicted. And so this led to the idea that the heroin addiction, the addiction itself, is happening because the mouse feels their life is meaningless, that there's a suffering, they're suffering so deeply that they just need something to numb the pain. But if you provide the mouse with a meaningful life, as it is meaningful to a mouse, then they're no longer interested in the heroin much. And so they don't become addicted. And so we just take that same sort of view of habits, addictions, compulsions, that they're covering over something, that there's some kind of suffering that these addictions, compulsions, and habits are just an effect of. And the purpose of these habits and compulsions and addictions is to distract ourselves from the suffering or to numb ourselves from the suffering. Now, from this perspective, we have to look at addiction in a totally new light. And we have to reassess people who are suffering from addiction in a totally new light. The people we have a mass opiate addiction problem in the United States right now. What's really happening is that we have a deep issue with suffering right now. People who feel their lives are so hollow and meaningless that they would rather numb themselves than to experience the suffering because they see no way out. And if you were to take away the opioid, a decent percentage of those people may just commit suicide. So from that perspective, maybe the addiction is actually helping them. And so absent an ability to alleviate the suffering or to transcend the suffering, the only sane choice is to take the opioid or whatever the addiction or habit is. That it's actually it's a kind of crutch to get us through a difficult situation. We may never transcend that crutch, however. But if you've gotten to a point in your life where you recognize that you first recognize you are not in control of your life, and you recognize that you would like to be in more control, you'd like it to be in the driver's seat of your life. That's step one. Admitting that you're not in control is very, very important. And it's not just that the addiction is what's in control of you. The suffering, that inner demon that you hadn't dealt with, is primary. The addiction is another layer of complication, a big layer of complication, and all the potential health issues that go with that, as well as self-esteem issues and judgment and societal condemnation and all this whole plethora of other things that goes with the addiction. We're going to be in a bad place, but if we can recognize that that's where we are, that's very key. We can recognize and be honest about where we are, that we're not in control of our life, and we'd like to be in more control of our life, at least be in the driver's seat of our lives. Then we have an opportunity to move forward. And now we're going to adjust the way we move forward away from a willful strategy and more toward practice. So this is just a very simple thing that, in the martial arts. It doesn't matter how complicated, it doesn't matter how advanced the skill is, so long as we put in sufficient practice with awareness, we're going to get there. And that's just the approach. And so that same approach can be applied to gaining something, to learn something new, as well as to unlearn something. You can practice unlearning, or disconnecting from, or uprooting would be another way. Practice uprooting the compulsive behavior. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is, if we have a compulsion, if we have an urge, if we have an addiction or a habit, say it's to a substance, for example, maybe it's to marijuana. It's not killing you, but clearly you're not moving forward in a productive way, and you recognize it's a crutch and you'd like to transcend it. You'd like to feel you're strong enough to transcend it. That's a good thing to want to feel, because clearly right now you feel you're not strong enough to transcend it, or at least you haven't felt strong enough to transcend it. You haven't felt strong enough to experience the suffering, the pain, the trauma, whatever it was that you had experienced directly without a numbing agent. And the healing will be in the feeling, so to speak. So we do want to get to a point where we feel capable and strong enough to actually look at that fear, look at that trauma, to experience it wholly without adding any unnecessary suffering to it. That's a very important place to get to. If we can get to that, we're great, but we're probably never going to get to that if the substance of our addiction is readily available. So we have to make it very inconvenient. If you've got an issue where alcohol is a problem, don't allow alcohol in your house. Just don't make it easy. Or if it's going to be, if you can't get that far, just make it really, really hard to get to. Put it in the attic, or that kind of thing. Make some basic rules that you can only have one glass at a time, or whatever. Make it difficult to get to. Don't put it in your living room. If you constantly eating on chips and salty and sugary things and you can't stop, just make it so you have to get up to go get it, get your chips or whatever, and you put them in a bowl, don't keep them in the bag, so it kind of limits you, and you have to go back and to get more. It makes you have to make a conscious decision to get them. That's important. The other aspect is to set goals. And it's just practice goals. It's like training in the martial arts or training in anything else. You're going to say, okay, I'm not going to allow this compulsion for 3 days. I'm not going to smoke any pot for 3 days. I'm going to drink any alcohol for 3 days. That's it. 3 days, no more. That's all. At 3 days, you can have some. The next time you go, okay, I'm going to try 4 days. I'm going to try a week. You might get to a point where I just want to see how long I can go. Might be 2 weeks. When you have the drink, don't punish yourself. It's like, if you fail at the martial arts, it doesn't help you to punish yourself. You just try again. So if you didn't make it to 3 days, maybe you made it to, a day and a half. Maybe you made it 6 hours. Okay, set your goal. So you didn't make 3 days. Reset the goal. So you made it 6 hours. Let's see if you can do 8 hours. Let's see if you can do 12 hours, half a day. All right, well, we'll just reset your goal a little more realistic. 12 hours. So you made 12 hours. Great. Maybe you have your drink. Maybe you feel like, I'd like to try another 12 hours. You try another 12 hours. Maybe you make it, maybe you don't. Reset the goal, reset the goal, reset. You just keep practicing. And what will happen is, through the power of intention and practice, your brain and nervous system will start to change. And at some point, you just won't have the urge or compulsion anymore. Now, it's important that if that urge and compulsion is clarified, but we've not actually gotten to a point where we're willing to face the suffering, it's going to reemerge as a new type of urge or compulsion. It may come out as anger. It may come out, like a habitual anger. It may come out in, eating if it was smoking or drinking before. Who knows what the ways it could come out. But in whatever means it's going to come out, it will be destructive. So ultimately, we do need to get to the point where we're actually facing what we're experiencing, whatever it is we've been trying not to experience. And so that's the hard part. There's no real getting around that. It's just you just have to feel it. Now, I would recommend setting aside time to feel it. So if you have relationship problems, the first step is if it's like a husband and wife kind of spousal relationship type problem, first off is, if the person's being abusive, you're going to have to be very, very honest with yourself. At what point do you share responsibility in that abusiveness? Because if you don't, then if you are unwilling to admit that you chose to marry that person and that you've continued with that person despite their abusive behavior, if you're not willing to admit that, then you have no way to move forward. And this is not about blaming the victim. It's just about taking responsibility for your life so that you don't make the same decisions again. And once you start taking that responsibility, you say, yes, I married this person. I kind of knew they were, not so great. I knew they had this tendency, or after we got married, I knew they had this tendency. I probably should have left them. I should have drawn a line, whatever. So there's maybe you've caved into them every time, and it's just like bolstered their tendency towards dominance and abuse. So it's important to recognize this. It is your responsibility as a human being to set boundaries and to choose who you want to spend your time with. That's just as it is. So let's imagine that if there is any culpability anywhere that you can improve that. So the basic question isn't who's responsible, like out there. Yeah, that person has got a lot of work they got to take care of. But the question is, were you perfect? That's all. Were you perfect? If you weren't, where can you improve? And that's the only question that really matters as far as you are concerned, right? As far as what you can do, how you can take some authority in your life. What ways can you refine or improve your movement through life, or your attitude towards how people are responding to you, or how people are aggressing you in your life, or how your boss is treating you, or how, maybe how your children are, or whatever. There can be so much pain and suffering in this world, and so it's understandable that we would want to escape it. It can be totally overwhelming, but there is a point where we just have to turn. It's like skiing. If you've ever skied, the beautiful thing about skiing is it's the perfect metaphor for life. If while skiing, now you're looking down the hill and it's terrifying, especially the first time, even if it's not that steep of a slope, And so the tendency is to want to avoid going downhill. So you think, I'm going to try and get to that point, and then I'm going to try and get to that point and that point. So your mind is going from left to right, to the left to right. What ends up happening is as you go to the left, you end up spinning around and end up going down the hill backwards and falling over. And the way to avoid that, it's very counterintuitive, is to actually keep your mind downhill. That's the point you're heading toward. And you're just navigating downhill. At all times, your mind is on that, in the direction that you're heading in the long term, not in the short term, in the long term. And so with that same mindset, we're heading straight into our fears. We're heading straight towards responsibility. We're heading straight towards taking charge in our life. We're heading straight towards living an assertive life. Not a life of pulling into your shell, not a life of distraction or avoidance. Keep your mind on that. So you've got to have some direction in your life, some meaningful goal that you're aiming towards, or else your why is insufficient to get you through the hardships of life. You need a strong why. What is your why? It might be your children. It might be your own, the integrity of your own soul. It's a big why. Oftentimes it's the most important why. So that you clean up your life, so that you're living authentically each day, more and more. It's a big why. It's a very, very powerful thing. And we keep our eyes on that. And the simple rule that I used once I realized the necessity for spiritual awakening, it's very, very necessary that we start removing anything that's veiling us. We start stripping away, ultimately, even the very essence of what you believe to be you. It's a surrender at a level that is just foundational, fundamental. You're stripping away your very soul, in a sense, to be that clear. Habits and addictions are utterly blinding. They're like black veils, and you just cannot see through. You're never going to feel that connectedness with life, or you're certainly hampered greatly so long as you have compulsions and addictions and habits. And so we want to soften these things so that we can start to have more connectivity with life. And that is a very buoying thing. It will strengthen you in life in ways that self-esteem couldn't touch. And so we're going to have to find meaningful goals. So if we're in a place where we've got these urges and compulsions, part of what's going on is our inner compass might be spinning. We might not know what feels meaningful to us. We might not recognize what feels meaningless to us. And so it's very, very important to start really parsing that out, really paying attention to what things feel very, very viscerally engaging and meaningful for you. And not philosophically, but I mean, just like it's very engaging. And involve yourself more into that. And the things that feel unengaging to you, start moving away. The things that feel sort of hollow, even if they're fun, things that are fun, but after you do it, you feel hollow somehow, empty or vapid. Those things are just a waste of your time. Those are the compulsions, urges, and distractions. Anything that's taking up your time that feels vapid is a distraction. So a key point here is we're going to have a powerful why. You need to have a powerful why. You need to recognize that you've got these urges and compulsions and that they're no longer serving you because you'd like to move past them. Once you have those two awarenesses, make things a little more difficult. Make it more difficult to get. So if you have addiction to Facebook or addiction to the internet, don't keep your smartphone by your bed. Don't carry your smartphone around with you at your house. Put it on the counter and just go about your day. Only when you need to go out or only when you actually need it, use it. If it's a food addiction or sugar addiction or some sort of substance addiction, make it complicated to fulfill that desire. Set goals and practice moving away from those compulsions or addictions. Practice abstaining. It's just practicing and practicing. And you can continue practicing for a long period of time. And at some point, boop, it just disappears. And be become ever more sensitive to meaning, the meaningful activities in your life, meaningful things that really engage you in that which is vapid, and move away from that which is vapid, move away from that which feels hollow, and toward that which feels meaningful. And if you get these things together, your life will be in high gear. You'll be in the driver's seat of your life evermore. And I'm just thankful to be able to, in any small way, play a small role in that. I'd love to hear back if you have any questions. This is a big topic. Please feel free to write your questions or comments in the comment section below. There's a lot of people in the country right now, in the world right now, are suffering from addiction and maybe hollow or meaningless lives, distractions, and compulsions. And so this video is really dedicated to these people that are really suffering very heavily right now. So please share this with anybody you know who's having those difficulties. And also, I'd like to remind you, there's a free 7-day trial. Click the link below for the Warriors Meditation. This is the type of meditation, it's a type of awareness, really, fundamentally, type of awareness, not like any other meditation you've probably ever heard of, that is going to put you in the driver's seat of your life. Hope to see you there.